Yeah, I mean, the Nekudas Advarim is that the Rebbe brings in Pashtus, what's the Nekudas Rishon Binyan HaMalchus? So Binyan HaMalchus, Malchus Yedur, that it's the Sefer the Chol Dargan, it's the last Sfira. That means that the Mashal B'Nefesh HaAdam, Adarech, like you have in Keres HaNefesh, so the Seichel Amidis is the Keres HaNefesh. Mashiach Dibur is the Inyani is to give over the Inyanim of the Seichel Amidis B'Nefesh to Azulas. So since you give it over to the Azulas, so aside mitzad the tafkid of the keich is not negay for the person himself, only for the zulas to be able to makabel the dvar seichel. And al derech zeh the chayes and nefesh that's transferred through dibur is only b'chinas chitzenis. The regesh that the person has, that the person himself could feel his regesh and nefesh. Azulas, the fact that the zulas could only be a keli to the chitzenius and nefesh, which is delivered through dibur. Al derech zeh in Maila in Sfiras HaMalchus, there's elamis biyah or nifradim. There's elikus, then there's biyah. And Malchus is the Inin Hagili, the Keich Hagili, to give over Elikus on this Galaver to a Metzias Yesh, a Dover which is Bechus Elikus. So that's Shalei Be'erech of Vifol, so there's the way the Inyan Elikus are Nesgala within the Mezgeres of Elikus, so to speak. That's a Chabad and Chavgas, that's so there's the way, there's Gid Elikus in Vel, and a Nivra, just Ein Arech Nivra Lebeir. So the Chayes Eliki, which is transferred, and that's Nesgala to Nivra, is Shalei Be'erech Lo. So L'chore, was for a Dargin Elikus do we need in order to have Sfiras HaMalchus? Only B'china Chitzenis. Then bring the Rebbe that there's no two biyurim that in order to Yidden be bein forbidden HaMalchus, but later Shoshana, that from Mamshah Zayin from Atzmas Ein Sof. So the first biyur is because Kol Advarim Chayzim L'Kad Musa. The whole Ratzin for Simpson, the whole Ratzin, even the Kavanah for Gilui the highest Stefanim is all the Tzerech HaElemis. And the whole Hashpala, the Inyan HaElemis is only on Meshach Shana Achas. So everything else is nostalgic. So the only one that can be ma'ared by a ratzim b'tayna glum lucha is only by atzmas. That's the first bit. They're not bringing the Rebbe Atzveita Zach. That's Mavur and Chassidus. It brings from Hemshech Chaim Beis that not that the only one to turn to. So the Rosh Hashanah is atzmas because everything else is elav and nechal b'mkari. But the Inyan was mevil uftan. The Rosh Hashanah that onkomens atzmas ain't so. In order to have the Inyan Hamalchus, which is gilel l'kusim biyah, that onkomens atzmas ain't so. So what's the pshat in them? L'chore malchus in chitzeni. So them bring the Rebbe Rashab first of all says that the kavana b'din malchus is not stam for the inayis havos. So we're not looking for the aspect of helem malchus. They're in hagili malchus on this galaver and l'kusim biyah. And so what's the pashas? The klal is kol hagaveh beyeser yered lamata mata beyeser. For some mashal has brought on chassidus always that it says vayechka shemeiser Meir batlu meishu mishalom or vayechka Shloime. What's in from the what the hafla of Shloime is. So what's b'shtei dafla? That in order to explain that varseichel to a talmid cut to someone which is in a lower darge, shalei be'erech lower is dafke ara, but she has a sag and the etzem inyan. If you have the inyan in a certain in a mugbal kaifin, if your taif is the inyan only in certain hagbalas, the way your taif is, so you're only able to deliver inyan to someone which is the fiarkecha. Dafke hagaveh beyeser, someone that by him is Meir the primius inyan. So vas hecher be'em laich the primius inyan, so he could explain this inyan in nidri kamadreges. So that's different. Kol the shtit kam pam mechsidis this word. The kol hagaveh beyeser lamata mata beyeser. But the Rebbe is medayker that the Rebbe Rashab doesn't stam say this klal of kol hagaveh beyeser lamata beyeser that in order to explain to Talmud Kotten dafür onkommen to a Rav, but she has the emek asvar. It's like a zweite Zach. The Rebbe Rashab brings her. I don't want to chaz over the whole thing again, but the Rebbe Rashab says that there is in the Maamar that there is two keiches in chachma. Let's say there's two keiches in seichel. There's a keich of there's one inyan, stamazay to be maimek in inyan, to have the emek asvara, and there's the keich of to be malbash inyan levushim, to understand it well, to process it, to understand it, and then there's another keich which is called the keich hafla, which is a keich to be mafshit to inyan from its levush, to be able to see to be able to have the head and the inyan the way it's mufshit from tzir, the pshittis of the inyan. It's keich hafla. If he speaks about there's hafshat of chacham, to be able to see. Inyan sichli, not the way it's mulubish, not the way it's mitzuyir, but to be able to see that it's an expression of an Inyan which is mufshit from tzir, Inyan of pshittis. So there's a keich hafla of chachma. The nochi farana keich hayirida from chachma. What type of keich hayirida the Rebbe Shah speaks about? A keich hayirida, the ability to be malbish a seichel and a mashal is a special keich. A keich and seichel to be able to stamazit, the Rebbe brings it in the brackets. There's a word from the, not that I know this, heard this from. That there's a statement. Sabil said this. I don't know if Shasheller said this, but the Shasheller brings the shame to Alter Rebbe that that in order to say a mashal, you have to have 3 tunaim. You have to know the mashal the way it is in Elam Hazi. You have to have a good avana in the mashal, a good avana in the Metzias Kameshi, a good avana in the Inyan Lamaila, the Nimshal Bas Nevila is bringing, the Inyan Lamaila. And you have to know the whole Seder HaShashlos from the Nimshal to the mashal. The mashal is not stamazay, you find an example. Okay? So you want to bring out a point, an example. The Arav that's able to be, Dabar Shloime Shtei Salaf HaMashal, it's okay, to be able to see the Inyan, a higher even able to be mamshech the Inyan, not just be able to see the Inyan. To be able to be mamshech the Inyan in a elam shalamata of the Inyan the way it is originally. So the Inyan originates, let's say, in a Lakos, or the Inyan originates in Atzilis. To be able to be mamshech that Inyan at the Zelber Inyan zos charei zagen in a nidrike welt, in a lower world. So Shloime HaMelech, but Emet Meir given the Inyan the way they are, let's say, in elam hayitzira, and he had the ability by Daber Shloime Shtei Salaf HaMashal to be mamshech that Inyan, that this Inyan should be expressed in a lower elam. And to be mamshech to a lower elam. Not only to see, there's one Inyan, to see the Inyan also the way it is in a lower elam. To be malbish the Inyan in a lower levush. That's a special kayach. A kayach hayirida is the kayach that the Inyan mitzad atzmei. We say just a mashal chitzeni ma'id, just to bring what we say. We say the musik of mamshech, but let's say a person has a certain hergish anefesh. And there's someone that has an ability to be able to be, that this hergish should be able to be expressed in a niggin, let's say. Or this hergish able to be expressed in words. That's a special kayach. The regesh originally is a edel azach, a regesh nefesh. There's a kayach that a person has. Okay, people have. Someone can have a regesh nefesh, but to be able that this regesh should translate itself in a niggin or an oisius, that's a special kayach. Nicht alle haben der kayach of that. To be able to be malbush this in an oisius. So you have lemaila of the dargis adin kes, but there's a kayach hayiride in chachma, which is the ability to bring an inyan, which is be'etzim azach, which is edel inyan, and to be able to be malbishit as a rab kumen in a lower levush. And so there's a keich to be malbish in a mashal. That's a special keich. So the Rebbe have them zok the Rebbe Rashav that the keich hayirid is the fi'erach the keich haflo. The Rebbe Rashav says in the Maamar that there's some chachamim that have only the keich hafshata, don't have the keich hayirid. But the B'derek Klal the keich hayirid is the fi'erach the keich hafshata. That means that a chacham the be'em is faran the keich to be mafshit the Inyan from his Shiur, be able to see the pshitas of an Inyan. The fi'erach zeh is going to be his keich to be malbish the Inyan in a mashal. Like you have the Frierdiker Rebbe says, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but the Frierdiker says in the Maamar, the Gabi is, what's the chush of a tzayer, of an artist? He says the chush is to be able to, everybody can see a certain machze, but to be able to be mafshit the machze that he sees from his tzir, and B'meli doesn't have the limit of how to express it. B'meli can express it in a tzir of a painting mamish. Because the keich hayirida is totally in the keich hafshat, in the keich haflov. The fact they're able to see this Inyan not limited in its tziyurim, in its levushim, from dort stammt der keich to be made the Inyan to a lower elam. Yeah, as they steht dort in the 9th alt. So of them, das their masber that the keich hayirid instead of, so the Rebbe Shaila is, instead of saying generally, will the Chareis bring in that in order to be a Mesfir Samachot, Shinyoni is Gile Lukas and Biyah, darf man onkommen, sei Atzme Seir Nitzov, the keich of keich ablik v'lev. So what's the word? Because you mamshech lukus lamata darf an onkommen sei hecher keich. Because kol hayerd then the Rebbe brings the beginning, he brings that lashon. The kol sham shach lamata yeser, adishen sheira sham shach lamali yeser. Why does he have, when he brings a dogma for this Indian, he brings a very specific dogma. There's keich hafshata, and there's the keich hayrida, and a mashal is lefi eif in the keich hafshata. Why does he have to, what's that dafka dem? Could have said the general point, that kol hagave yer lamata mata yeser. Bis der Herr versteht mit dem Indian, man darf, yeah. So if them sagt, so the Rebbe is marked like this, that there's two in, first there's two in the keich hayrida. With this part, there's two in the keich hayrida. That's also verstanden, yeah? There's keich hayrida, stamazek to be mitzamtzim the Indian, and then there is to be a malbish the Indian and Lavush. Two separate things. Yeah, we're not going to chazer over that part. So the Rebbe says, what sagt the Rebbe that the word? I don't know if you saw it inside. What does the Rebbe say? Shloime, Ramazan Nachon, Linevene, Gatam, Shemi Ba Maamar in Hayrida, this Lapsha so moshel, because Vibal does it, because so the Rebbe says like this, there's two in Yadim and Seichel. I'll say about pen, we'll see it inside. There's Indians, there's a mile in Seichel, be able to see the emek of a svara. Not a pshata. A svara, it's a zender emek a svara. It's an Indian. That, and then there's enough Yerida to be mamshach the Indian lamata. Then there is the keich hafla of chacham. The keich hafshata of chacham. Here he wants to explain, so he says, Vibal does it, what does he say? Vibal does in the Maamar ret, Kim Daberkan, the keich hafla, which is hafshata shebachachma. There's Indian of Emeka Seichel, and there the hafla of Emeka Seichel means the Hedrak Bola, the Kol Sham Shachal Maila Yeser, Nimshach Lamati Yeser, in Eimek HaSeichel, the Keich, to be Maimek in the Svara. That's expressed in the Rid of Tzimtzum. But when you get to the Keich Hafshat, Vu brings Chareis the ultimate, or the gracekeit of the Keich Hafshat of Chochmeh, in the fact that it's able to be Yedid, to be Mislabish and Amashal. That's like the Rebbe. So, even Klali the Vart, I said this last time, even Klali the Vart is, the regular must have called like Ve'Beis Yer Lamata Mata B'Yeser is, Elyon and Tachten is not Hafachim. Elyon and Tachten is, there's different Madrigas. There's a Darga Elyon, a very high Madriga, and then there's a Er Lamata Yeser. You say there's Er Haner is Nespashit to a limited amount of space. Mashik and the Er Hashemesh is Meir Merchak Godel Ma'id Ma'id. That's the Indian of Merchak, not Hepich. Not if Er Hashemesh would shine even past the wall, that would be a stir. It was something Hepich in the air, and Ava became the air managed to be mispashit in a place which there was a stir to there. That was Eis Almas, something which blocks it, and Ava became the air came. Richuk Godel Ma'id is not Hepich. It's very, very far, much lower. So, Meret Stam as not the Keich HaFlo of Chacham. Meret in the Keich HaEmek of Chacham, which is not the Musik of Avshata. There, in where is it expressed? The ultimate Emek is that it's able to be Mamshach the Dvar Seichel to the lowest of the low dargis, but not Islap Shazamashal. It can Mazas and the Seichel to God and Nidrik Ebal Seichel. Ash'inkin, where is it expressed? The Keich HaFshat of Chacham. So here, Halbasha and Amashal and Avshat are two opposites. Because the Tnu of Avshat is not to make the inik, not to put it in concrete levushim, not to make it, not to be mabashit in a levush, in tzir mamish, to see the way it is mufshit from tzir. Yeah, you can have a svara. I mentioned this dugma in the pay svara from Yibal Chayve. We're already explained. Let's say the Ragashavar's dugma that you're isser chametz, whether you have to burn it or not. The Ragashavar is not into going into the Prate Alimudim. Let's say I'm just saying a dugma. The Prate Alimudim of Neisar, where you learn Serefas Chametz. He wants to see it as a general Indian. That there's Chaimer and there's Suri. He wants to be mafshit the Indian from its regular tziyur. For that, being masbir and a mashal, that a mashal is being madgish the expressions of the Indian. You're being madgish. You're emphasizing the lavush. There's fire and there's burning chametz and fire. You're taking away the aspect of it the way it's mufshit from a lavush. You're not being madgish the concept that's beyond the lavush, which is only hinted at the lavush. The whole nikud of a mashal is to make emphasis and to give adgasha on the lavush of the Indian, on the story. So that's hepech the Indian of Avshad. So here it's neget. When Mevila Reis bring it, the malchus, the Indian was Mevila Ufter Shishana is nimshach from Atzma Seidin Sof. Mevila Reis bring it. That's the Indian of being nimshach in an Indian which is hepech the original Indian. So now there's certain Indian from Kol Gavei is here the Mata This is the Rebbe's touch. He says in I Beish Teitner Kol Gavei is here the Mata Beis. It means a dogma. Here the Rebbe stolz have the dogma. But there's an innovative because I don't know if you let's see this. The Shloime that time she Maamar in I read this house as a moshul looking at Dabra kan ke khafla hafshat shubha. In zen negea yeser, that means negea yeser means where is it expressed? The ultimate ilui through amshach lamata. Amaret the ilui mitzad ke khafla that's expressed in the inyan of Yerida the slapshas moshul. He says why? Hagam in hay slapshas moshul means you be malbish in levush. Mas ik na redet sind hu doch he beginnen afla mir kommen kein bezesh malbish das sech be moshel nikru mesgal ke afla doch was er betet zesh slaus the moshel he be afla ok shafla im mugderes mutzieres bat zir do mal im slaus the moshel am tzad mit is in afla actually is gam slaus the moshel ja da verstehen wir das mit der saying a dogmen sechel but there is a even of afshata that is mugbal that he could only see the Indian the way it's when it's not nirgash the levush when the levush when the expression of the Indian, the way it's expressed in a tzir, so that's going to be mailam on him. That's going to be a stira to see the pshittas of the Indian. In order for him to see the pshittas of the Indian, he has to be mafshit the levush. Says the mitas in an afla is that he's not limited. He's not defined that the pshittas of the Indian is limited only to be expressed in the fact that it cannot be a levush. The pshittas of the Indian could be in a slavish even in a levush. Even through a levush, can't the hand the pshittas of the Indian. And that's the mitzvah in afla. Mitzvah in afla is that he's not defined in what eifin he takes the svar. Yeah, the Nekuta calls the Rebbe's b'mechalik here is the Indian of there's one Indian when they use the other language, but the Rebbe's saying here levush and seichel, but the concept is the same concept as other areas. There's something called the Rebbe uses this language many times in Maamar. There's something called blik vol, and there's something called blik geder. Blik vol is is mugbal. It's light, but it's limited. It's only mispashet in a certain area. Eir Hashemesh is Meir b'chol makom u'makom. If you Eir Haram b'sagim, it's Meir everywhere. It's one Inyan. The Inyan is light. Light could be nimshach l'kol makom u'makom. So that's the regular Inyan of Kol HaGavei Yisir l'mata mata b'Yisir. A gewiss Inyan from Elokus. Elokus is not only Meir in Chachma, it's also Meir in Midis, it's also Meir in Maisa, it's Meir l'mata mata. The fact that Elokus is not defined. It's not defined by a certain... It doesn't have to be expressed through light. It can be expressed through darkness also. It's not limited to Tzir altogether. A mitzvah in Apshitis is that he's not mugdar, that he's mufshit from Tzir. You could say a story. And in that story, what's going to be expressed? An Inyan which is mufshit legamri from Levush. A Rav to be able to take an Inyan which is mufshit and able to be mabashit and Levush, say it in a story which is b'chana and regash and Pshitis, that's been said that mitzvah Inyan afla, that he's not mugdar, that the Pshitis has to be in a Tzir of heipech islapshis omash. So here it's not stam. Usually the word kol hagavei the mata is the same Inyan, but it's not mugbal, and therefore can be nimshach to a lower darga of chacham also. Here we want to bring out the Inyan is not defined; doesn't have a defined tzir of how it has to be expressed. The Inyan, so Inyan of shittas of seichel, but it's able to be someone who's hamitis in afla is able to express it in a story. He could use the method of a levush in order to bring out a nekuda which is mufshit from levush. From Vana Shtant is because he sees the Inyan not the way it's defined in a certain form. The Rebbe is saying it in Kei Chasel, so this is, why is that negay here? Because that gives a whole different biur. Was meint das? Let's see what the Rebbe says here. It says, the Shloime, da gilish ade amachas meshi bas firis de zo, gili bat zilus oder chile de tzimtzul. What's the difference between a Gila Lukus in Welt and Gila Lukus in Atzilus? Gila Lukus in Atzilus in Yoni is Bittul Talukus. Let's say Erdin Sofis in Yoni, Bittul that Hula Vadi Huva in Zulas. And the Gans Messias is Bittul. Atzilus in Yoni is Bittul. It's Bittul Bagbala. You have Bittul the way Bittul is on Agbala, and you have the way the Inyan Ha'er is Mislabish in Caleb. So the Lukus is Gala in Agbala, but it's the same Inyan. It's a Lukus. There is Gila Lukus Hecher von Agbala, Keser, and there's Elikus, the way it's mislabish in Kalim, in Tzir. So the Zelber Inyan Namukbal the Kaif. So that brings out that the Eid is not limited to be, that could be made in higher dargis, it could also be made in Gvul. That's all, so that brings out the Blik Gvul of there. For that, you don't need Atzma Seir Nitzah. They want to say that what's maintenance, that for Malchus, you need Atzma Seir Nitzah, you need the fact that the Eid is not defined. Not that it's not limited, that it can be Nimshach Lamata Mati, it can be Nimshach even in a darg of Gvul, it can be Nimshach even in Chagas. He's not defined in any method the way he expresses himself. He can express himself in a lavush of mitzias also. What does the Rebbe say weiter? Agile shadei amakos k'meshi parts b'fnei atzma, which in Yoni is should be gili b'biyah, al derech ha'yirida this lapshus v'mishal. What hat man davon? Why is he madgish that? See, you have Elam Haza in Yoni is mitzias. Biyah in Yonim is mitzias. In Yonim is not bittul. And there should be more should be more than a kud of that everything is bottled to lukus. In a world and through a language of Metzias, you're using a language of Metzias. A levush, a mashal from Elam Haza Agashmi. You're using a phenomenon of Elam Haza Agashmi, which in Yoni is Metzias, to express on a kudah bittul telekus. That's because the musik of bittul telekus, that's nevea from the amitis in the air, which is not defined in any form at all. So the nekudah bittul telekus could be expressed and could be brought out even in a levush of Metzias. Because the air has no gather at all. Das sagt der. Aber Pizze, das mit dem moving gate leile dem shaka shayad nas bin machas. Sheine mugdares, that's that gosh. He's not defined by gather vatzir de lamalim slapshus. Eire leki is not defined that he cannot come be slapshus mitzias. Steht hecher from mitzias. He's not mugdar in that gather. He's not, and therefore, since he's not defined that he has to be dafke in a way of heder hay slapshus. Darf gemufshet, darf geschlossen ist. Kann kommen in Metzias. Kann sich herabtragen in Metzias und dort ein Guf ist also kein that the only Metzias is Elukus. Shalchein Adam Shach, and therefore, so you need to have the Keich Elukus which is not Mugda. Shalchein Adam Shach Azu, Atzma said himself, Nimshach Mislabish Agid Gam Bibya Atzma Filu B'Demish Kam Adem Yede Ke'ata Palte. Yeah, that's the Nekod. The fact he could be Mamshach in Biyah is that said Atzma himself, that's not Mugda. Not Mugda, not Mugda. That's the Hadgosh. Okay. Oh, so the Fiza of the Rebbe Zabert. Da liegt the Rebbe zu noch Hazach. So we have till now, what's the Rebbe saying till now? We're saying that one in Yidin Tun of the Tkiyah Shefer is that he's Ramam Shechadar Gabel Kosesh is Lefi Erech Haveda. And it's 3 hours Zichuf, 3 hours Tkiyah Shefer, is when Me'er Midas Arachim L'mayla. That's a madrega of Elokus, which is Lefi Erech Ta'avede. So the Tachten, by him being Mizdachech, that's Hepech of Din of Islavshus. He's being Mizdachech, he's being Misalet to the Elyon. Lefi Erech is Aliyah, the Elyon is Nimshach, and is Meir. Lefi Erech Hamash Tachten is a Keli, the Elyon is Meir. Then there is Atzma, the Rebbe says, Yivchar Lanu, or the fact that Kei Shefer is Meir by Atzma Saratzon Liyas Melech. So that Kei Shefer is Mamshach, the Etzem, the Eibusher himself, which is B'chal higher than any definition. And then we have this third inyan that Rebbe is saying, was steht in Ein Dalet, that in order to be Mamshach Elikus, what's the Likud of Rosh Hashanah? Elikus in Welt, Elikus in Biyah, and Daimim, that's Neveah, it's at the fact that the air is not Mugdar, is not defined. And therefore, air could be expressed in the Levush of Mitzis, in the Levush of Welt. That's the Tzveit inyan. So the Rebbe says like this, Shloime, Shloime, the Flip Beer Zeh. Ich sage weiter, if somebody stays his beer, darf das Meere sein. Und nicht, gehen weiter.
Why is...
No, I'm saying you don't have to ask questions. I'm just saying, if... Can't sprechen, I'm just trying to... Yeah, what's the
Why is... Very nice.
You could laugh also, das ist sicher.
Why,
yeah.
Why is then considered the opposite of in the mouth?
Mitzias. Mitzias is hepech in Eir. Eir is that there is no Mitzias outside of the Eibishter. That there's only him.
So anything that says...
In Nivraim, the Biyah, higher Nivraim, so they have an aspect of Bittul. Malachim are Kalim. Daimim is that there's only matter, only Mitzias. There's no Nikud of expressing something beyond its Mitzias. So that's the Nikud of saying a mashal. You're bringing out a concept without being mafshet anything. Say a story. And the Levush, and with that you could bring out an inyan, which is a ganzen mufshet from the tzir of a story. Because you say, there's Zeir Hechedargis, that you have certain ifanim that you, like Al Derech, the Rebbe speaks, Legabi Beneget Vayasem Esayom Lecharava. What was the pel of that when we say by the Dayenos, when they walked through the Yabasha, so it was Charava, it wasn't wet, it was dry. The Rebbe teaches Yam is but Yam is Amad Diskasi and Yabasha is Gili. So there could have been that there would have been this galus. Like there was this galus of dargis which are sasum, but it could be in a way that it's nirgash as a hecherazach. It's wet. It means you're able to sense that this is not he's not saying a story. There's hidden hints over here in the story. He's saying something deep, or something if it's beyond this levush. No, he's expressing it through a levush. Then it's yabasha, it's dry. Yivchar and zakta ma'aseh mit der het bechal that there's Indian of Eimek, it's Indian of Eim. And this levush mit dem zaks, if the Indian is not mugder, so with the language of levush you can bring out the Indian of Er, which is higher than which is not mugder in the gather of tzir. Since it's not defined by being beyond habasha, so it can be expressed in habasha, and one be nirgash sahecher azah.
That's dafka the highest.
That's dafka the highest level. It's not defined. Yeah.
If it was stam a high level,
if it was just so if it was just in a bleak, if we were speaking about the kecha emek of chachma, which is not the nikud of hafshat of pshitis, of not a non. The Rebbe saying kecha hafshat is not the. We want to bring out. There's a musig of heipech hafla. The chorah levush is heipech hafla. Emek and shitchius are much higher and much lower, not opposite. Hafshat and albasha are opposite. We want to bring out opposite, which we want to bring out because the seichel, the ultimate seichel is not defined by a specific way of being, and therefore he could also come in a form which is the opposite, the Indian of shittas. Elakusim biyaz, Indian of afachim, of heipech tetunu. Mitziz heipech tetunu of bittul, and that's Meir himself.
They say it's Yosim Yatzmos that it's a bittul Yatzmos anyways.
Udaimen.
Yeah,
that's the question.
So why do you need like Bligeda to be Miskala?
There's many aspects of Elam Hazim. I'm saying there's many aspects in the Mitzias. We're talking about the simple musik of a daimon. Daimon is a piece of it's matter. What do you mean? It's
that itself is the thing.
The Sunnah Chazach that the daimon has a shaykhs to the Yeshamiti, but that's a different union. Doesn't take away the aspect that we're speaking here when you get to them. A piece of matter. A Mitzias should be a keli to Hedran, the Indian of Eir. The Rebbe through using a language of simple seichel to explain, to express, or to be mabash in the code of hula vadi hu bein zulas of ein seif. That's hafachim. There's another Indian. The Shloime fibir zeh. So the Rebbe is like this. The Rebbe is being mad that this is a third. This is another Indian. Fibir zeh according to this beer 9 base, Shatam shebelei shiyeh bin amav zvad yam shacham atzv serin sof. What's the kibdei shetiye yirid lamata mata, and an even of a slapshus, not yirid lamata mata, also zecheren lamata elokus begili hecher from mitzvahs. In a way of a slapshus. Miret elokus in a language, simple language. So herzach nish da inin of er. Hu al deyam shachas keach mufla she'ini mugder. A keach, which is mufla, means it's beyond definition. Nish she'ini mugder. So the Rebbe says, "Lefi this beer, hayirida, haygili da malchus yesh leyachas degabe keach hamufla." We will sagen, as the Rebbe will sagen that in der Klan Chassidus we say that there is bittul yichud the tata and yichud the ilah. Let's say what's usually the beer. Avad besides for elokus, nothing exists. Everything exists because the Eibusher creates it. But what's the pshat mitzad the ma'ale kolam and there's yichud the tata? The world has some tefillah smoking. You say there's elokus the way is mislabish and tefillah sachesed. Let's say. The fact that water exists is because the Eibusher created water. But Lepoil, how does the Eibusher's mitzvah chesed express himself? That he's through the fact that water goes mamay lamata. That's an expression, let's say, of the Eibusher's chesed, or the fact that the Eibusher's mashpia chayis to all nivraim teva Hashem lakeil. That's an expression of the Eibusher's chesed. So there's a tfis makim to velt. Velt is azam and sarzach, which expresses the inyan of holokus. Without the Eibusher, nothing exists. But Lepoil, does the world have some type of value? The world has value because through the mitzvahs shebayla is expressed his milas. You have a Chassidus says he had a big gibber, and they say, how do you see how strong he is? From the type of stones that he's dealing with, from the type of weights that he's draining around, you see what type of gibber he is. So a person through his poolis, so there's a tfisa smoking to the pool. This pool expresses his milas. So the Eibusher is mahava. The whole Nekuda Welt is Val der Eibusher is a Mahav. But through his Havas Eilumis, there's a certain Yinyanim Elokus on his Gala through Metzias Eilumis. So that you're giving Tfizas Makam to the Metzias Welt. You say someone's Mechadish a Svara. So the type of Svaras that is Mechadish, that shows what type of Keichas he has. So there's a Tfizas Makam to the Svaras. Through that he's expressed. So in the whole Metzias Eilumis is only because the Eibusher created it. And the Metzias of Mayim is, and the Ashpa, all comes from Eibusher. But there's a tfizas makim to the mitzvahs. Why is there a tfizas makim? Because through Mayim brings out the Eibusher's midas chesed, and Eish brings out the Eibusher's midas gvura. Then Hashemayim is happening kaveit kel. Every single thing in this world brings out a certain shvach, a certain gadlus, and holocaust. So that itself is a tfizas makim to bel. So that's you. What's yichud ilah? Mitzvah she'ekin do the Eibusher is beyond tziyur, higher than chachma, higher than chesed. The Eibusher is leis machshat tfisah. He's ain't safe, beyond definition. So legabi that darga, the world has no tfizas makim. The Eibusher, the way he's ain't safe, is not shaykh to say that the Metzias Sheba Elam expresses his ain't safe. He's ain't safe, so he's beyond the world is Nyanim Agvul. So the world only expresses the Darga Velakus, which is Mizgala through Tzir, through Agbala. Mashiach the Velakus is ain't safe, there's Vert Shareis gesagt in Vel. So the Gabi, the ain't safe Velakus, the world has not Tfisas Maki. As is B'derek Klas. So the Rebbe Lake Tzuda, that Shloime, the Rebbe saying it as a Chiddush, not so posh. That this, we have an Indian that, there's one Indian that Darga Mugbelis of Velakus, the regular beer that says on Chassidus. The fact that there's let's say Nivraim, through their hasaga, through their understanding, they verstehen Elokus, or there's a Nyanim which express the keiches of the Eibusher. So there's a tfisas makim to the Metzias Welt, because through Teva Hashem Lakeil is expressed the Eibusher's chesed. This nekuda what we're saying now, the Rebbe Shab says that Miret, this nekuda that mitzad amitis in an apshitis. And is Galaver in Welt, and the fact that there's Gila Elokus in Welt is Neveah, it's in Apshitis, because Elokus is not mugder, is not defined by any tzir at all. Therefore, it can also come in the Tnuah of his lapshus. This Indian is mitzad this dark. Is there tfisas makim to the Metzias Welt, or there's no tfisas makim? So Svara wird gesagt that this Indian, when you speak about the way Elokus is big full, the air is mislavish and tfiras chesed. So water is a keli to express, I'm saying water, but the water is a keli to express the Eibusher's chesed. Or the fact that the Eibusher is mashpia, hashpa, to all nivraim, l'maydu lamata, that brings out his chesed, his pashas achayis. So it's an active thing. We're dealing with a certain mile protas in Elokus, which is expressed through this phenomenon of the Eibusher being mashpia b'chol makim u'makim. Mashiach dorat an atzveit zach. Mitzad amitis hapshitis, he's not limited to being a zgaleh. In a way of hafshata, he can be in his gal in a way of lavush. Even a daimim could sense it. Mitzad the nekudas hapshitis. So that's a tfisa smokim to the mitzias of daimim. The daimim is gvul. Fakert. The daimim has no shaykhs. Because it's not defined at all. When you say that the Tachten expresses him because the Tachten has a shaykhis to him, he's a limited Indian, and the Tachten is also a limited thing, and this Indian expresses that Indian. Then there's a certain tfisa smoking. You can't say that the Tachten is garnished. Mash'enken, when you say that the reason why he's Meir somewhere is because he's undefined, and therefore there's no limit where he could go. So the fact that he can be nimshach lamata is not mitzad the shaykhis of the mata to the Elin. So the Elin is blikvol, is not mugdar. So then we'll talk to the Rebbe Achidish nicht das. That Ameret der biur dem Indian is a tfisa smoking to the Metzias of Welt. That's the via Shloime. Just the gam, the fibish. That's a chidush. Shloime the fibish is there. Shatam shibich dei shiur b'din amach. So Adam shachas master yourself. Why do you need to ask yourself? Dei shati yirid lamata mata. Why Adam shachas keich mol v'shenim mugdar? Hayirida means the gile lukas in Welt yesh leyachas legabe keich hamofla. This, even though you say, why is he nimshach in a way of yirida? Because he's undefined. But his undefined is expressed with the fact that he's nimshach to a place which is hepechim. So that's the way he expresses himself. Viv zok his head ragdara in the fact that he's able to be nimshach in simple aces. It's the fact that he's able to say the Indian of Alakus. In a sprach von Eslavshos, that expresses is undefined. So that means that the Yerida is the keli, so to speak, to his head ragdara.
Why is it clear? It's also there also.
But it's also there also.
Also in expression. Why is that expression?
You're saying Luchur is just he's not defined at all. But so if it would be just Nimshach Lamayla, what's Chishtarez gesagt the fact that he's a mitzvah pshitas, because that mitzatzir he's a keli for it. The fact that he comes to the Tachten and in the sprach of the Tachten and the sprach of Metzias, so dafke the fact that Lukus comes in a way of Metzias is how is it expressed? The fact that Yivchar is not mugdar, and the fact that he comes in a levush of Metzias. If the Elokus would be Nezgala and a tzir of bittul, say the dogma the Rebbe Rashab brings a chacham which in Yoni is avshata, and a reta sprach von avshata. So that doesn't bring out that he has a shaykhs to the Indian, the mitis avshitis which is not mugdar in the tzir of avshata. If you could speak a edle sprach, that when he speaks a simple language, a sprach of maises, and through those stories gets chares and the kud of pshitis of Elokus, there you see that he has the Indian in an undefined way. So the Metzias, speaking in a language of Metzias, expresses his head ragdara. Doesn't have to prove. It's not a question of proving. It's not a question of proving. The Rebbe is saying here, nothing's by chance. L'mayla. The fact we see it is there's inyanim which are keli. There's an Indian of keli and zichuch and bittul. That's the same Indian. The Indian of zichuch and bittul and keli doesn't express the head ragdara of Elgin. The Metzias of the Tachten, not the bittul shaloi. His Metzias, that expresses the head ragdar of the Elyon. And B'Sheirish, that's the fact that there is a Metzias Atachten stems from such a thing. The same way you say B'Negei Keli. You say, because Mayim is a Keli to Lakuz, therefore Lakuz given a Slavish Mayim. The Keyachari is a Slavish in the Ayin. Why? Because there's a certain Edelkeit in the Eye. A certain Edelkeit in the Eye makes it a Keli to the Keyachari. So you're saying this is Tfisa why are you saying this is Tfisa Smokim to the Eye? You say, V'haraya, if the ayin is more of a keli, Simera is gedel, the keichari is going to work better. If the ayin is going to be more back sham, the keichari is going to work shvacha. That means that there's a tfisa smokim to the mitzias of the ayin. The more edlakait, the more makes it a shaykhis to the keichari. The Rebbe is saying al deras afakert. The more mitzias, and after the kain the eldin is nimshach nazam mitzias, brings the chmer reis the pshitas of the ayin. The same way in ishtashul as you say. That the fact that something is nimshach dafka in a keli, in a pnimi is nimshach nefen of keli. That shows that the keli has a tisas makam legabe the pnimi is legabe the Indian, and that's why the vasmer the Indian is mezuchach. The leicht mer. Others have a care. The more the Indian hapshitis, the Indian amailas pratis and tzir of Elokus is this gala through the fact that the Tachten is a keli and the shaykh is the bittul. The heder hapshitis of Elokus, the heder tzir that's expressed in the fact that he's nimshach in the tachtonis of the Tachten. So the same way mitzad mamali zokman is tfisas makim to the mitzias anivra. With what is there tfisas makim? Mitzad the zichuch with the bittul of the nivra. Here there's a tfisas makim to the mitzias anivra. You're saying that it's an outcome. The Yivchar is bleakful. The melee is everywhere. The Yivchar is not bleakful and agvul. The Yivchar is atzma sein sof. A punkt as if you're going to get a gvul is a certain inyan, which the gabed in a gvul. What's negay is there should be kalim, there should be bittul. Al derech the Yivchar might still have an inyan of bleakful, and the gabed and the bleakful is expressed through the tnu of mitzias. Let me send the Rebbe's lashon. Let me the Rebbe say, huh? Let's see what the Rebbe is saying. Let's try to unless the mitching no? Let's see what the Rebbe says here. See, the Rebbe saying that's a chidush. So Shloime, that's nicht the Pasha. The hayirida yesh liyachas the gabekei chamuf. In was besteht der Afla? Kiven shafla shleihu. She'eni mugder batzir de lamayla dafka. We call gam leir lamata. It says you have in Chassidus lamashal that there is, you say neisa afachim. The Yivchar is neisa afachim. Opposites. So there it says in one place, the fact that there was afachim were created. Who said this musik of afachim b'chlal? The fact that the concept of afachim is also nisab. Everything was nisab. All the gidra asechel were nisab. There is mitzad etzma v'alakus. It's not shaykh to say afachim either. There's the way he wants. There's no opposites. So he's saying, how do you express where's vu bnei tzcharis the nekuda the Yivchar's mufshit is not defined? That there's an alien and there's a tachten, and the tachten lechura is heipach alien. The tachten is a stirit alien. Mitzvah is a stirit bittul, and avav again he's not defined. Then it can be nimshach lamata. If there's no concept of a mata and a ma'ila, it's shaykh to say that he's so. Then his pshit is also then mitvas b'shteit the pshit is ein. Here we're speaking about the nekud of heder agdara, which is that he's not limited to be in such a form; he could be in any form. That means that there's a concept of ma'ila mata, and he's undefined. Mitzad, before the musik of Metzias was in Chadish, is not shaykh to say mufla either. You heard what the Rebbe sagt? Ist nicht klar?
That Indian would still be brought out more in Elul Hazard than it would in Shiur.
What do you mean that Indian?
Indian that is.
I'm saying is, when you say that something is not defined, it says, what do we mean that he's not defined? He's not defined in any form of being. If there's no concept of forms of being yet, there's no Elin and there's no Tachten, it's not shaykh to say then a kodah that he's not defined, that he's not mugdar. That he's not mugdar is only shaykh to say after there is an Elin, there's a musik of bittul talakus. And together is that Metzias is a stira to bittul. And then the fact he's not defined. And he could be nimshach, and he could mitzad his head agdara, the earth could be nimshach even in Elul Metzias. That's after there's already a system of Maila and Mata. And he's in Bas Bashtet his Maila that is undefined. I'm saying a simple thing. I'm not saying a simple thing. It's coming out of the family. I'm saying a simple thing. Before there was a concept of Maila and Mata. Is it shaykh to say a flaw that is not defined? It's shaykh to say that he says something. There's no Metzias yet. What do you mean mitzad then? When there's no Metzias yet of Maila and Mata. The Eibusha didn't create a concept yet of hafshata and albasha. So shaykh to say that in what's the ili of Elikos that is undefined. To say the word that is not mugdar is that there is hagdara, there is definitions of mitzias, and he is not defined by these definitions. He's not mugbal. Then there's an ili in the fact that he's not mugbal. If I push the zach, the Eibusha wouldn't have created. Let's say today it doesn't make sense to us that a siba should come after a mesubav. The Eibusha created the klal yaseichel. Let's say the Yivchar created a world in a way that there's no such a cloud that the cause comes before the effect. Then would it be a pella if the cause came after the effect? Then it wouldn't have been a pella, as Aziz does. It's not a ili, it's not a flaw. You say, what's the ili? In Vaz Bashtet, the ili from Elikos, Vaz Bashtet, the hafla of the Yivchar, that he's not limited to be that Eir in Sof, the Eibushar's Eir, his pshitis, is not defined to be Nizgala Dafke Natzilis. Es kann Nizgala Vern Elam Haze. Even a Stein can this verstehen. Even a Stein can the What's that flaw that a Stein can is the What's the big gadlus that a Stein can is the So you're already saying that because there's this definition that a stone is not a keli telekus.
Maybe we're saying a flaw that be new. It's not our perspective. It's a flaw.
So what? But you're speaking of in the lakus the way it's this Indian. So we don't need the lakus the way the Yivchar is beyond an ili that's beyond our tfisa. This, what the Rebbe is speaking in nine based. In order to have Sfiras Amat of Anonkum, it's Atzmas Yer Insof. Medafish Tov Mevi Elokus is Be'etzem. Atzmas of Elokus before the whole concept of Metziah started. That's the Ili Elokus, the way Insof is Meir in Welt, in Elims, in Shiur. That's what the Rebbe wants to bring out. The Rebbe wants to bring out a mile and the beer. What the Rebbe is saying before is Yivchar Lanu is higher than the Sinyan. There in the Redman out the way the Eir Lekir ready as a Sheikhs the Welt. That truth, but before anything came into being. Not yet.
Yeah.
Vierlich. Let's see the words. Was besteht der Flaw? No, was besteht the godless? You say the godless of a certain chacham besteht in them. I think a simple thing. You say the godless of the chacham godless is that he can explain his seichel to a yelet katan. Right? Then besteht the godless from the chacham. It says if there is no concept of a higher chacham and a lower chacham, let's say there would be no such a concept. So there's no Eli to explain the seichel to Talmud katan. Once there's a concept that there is dargas in seichel, there is kolam amitzias, there's hecher seichel, nidrik seichel. Then you say that he in was besteht his meile that he's able to explain the lukus to a lower darga also. That's after you have a concept of his chalkus and seichel, and then there's a flaw. He's not mugbal. He's not defined by the definitions. Once you have definitions, there's an Eloi that he's not defined. Before the concept of definitions existed, is a shaykh to say that it's a flaw, it's an Eloi that is able to be in the lamata. Shaykh Hazagna says that. So the Rebbe is saying, the Eibishter himself, Atzmos, before anything came into being, before there's Maila, before there's Mata, the Eibishter himself. Is it shaykh to say that Mitvaz brings Chares, his pshittis, that is able to mamshach al-kus lamata? The whole concept of mata doesn't exist. So it's not shaykh to say that the Eibishter's undefinedness is expressed in the fact that he's masber that the could come in a tzir of lavush. This hafla that the Ein Sof Elokus is expressed in the fact that he's able to be nimshach, enveloped in a doimim biz lamata mata. That's only an atzvus erin sof. That's all the way the Eibishter shaykh is already tigiluyim. The way the goddess of Elokus is expressed within the mizgeres of mitzias, not the way he's be'etzem before the whole concept of mitzias came into being. Chal is clear. Let me say the issues though. It says, there's more of this, but if you call it, it says, Kivan Shaflosh Leishin Mugdabatz, was Bashteit der Meile. It says, in was Bashteit sein Pshittis. We're not speaking about Stamazay Ein Sof. In was Bashteit sein Pshittis, that is not defined to be in a tzir of Eldian, he could also be Nimshach in Tach. In them Bashteit sein Heder Agdor. In them Bashteit sein Pshittis. That is not mugder to be in a tzir of Lamailam and Amakim, let's say, it could be a Makim too. In them Bashtei Zaym Shittis. So then, Kivan in was Bashtei Zayn Afla, who she'enim mugder ba'tzir de Lamayla Dafka, say a symbol, what do you, in order to bring a Lukus Lamata Mata, what type of Indian a Lukus is needed? The Etzem, which is beyond the concept of Ma'ila Mata, or the Pshittis of a Lukus, the Ein Sof of a Lukus. They're saying the Ein Sof, which is not limited. So it's Elokus, the way Elokus is Nizgala within the Gdarim of Elamis already. Not the way Elokus is Be'etzem. Before the whole concept of Metzias was initiated.
You could use that, just you don't need it.
And
that's why it's not...
The Mela, that in is not expressed through this. What's expressed through Gili Lamata? Through Gili and Daim. It's a famous, it's a good mashal actually, but you say, it's not, you use the Lashon that this Havas, you have in order to create, you need Machas or Arabavad, or you need Keach Atzmos, different L'shenes and Chassidus that the Mashmos is that Sfiras Hamachos Kabiyach created the world, or this Indian created the Indian. His Havas only from Ara Bavad. What's the pshat? The Eibush himself didn't create; only Ara created. There's different pratim in it, but one of the it's a mashal that you say a king or a government has the authority to make rules to say that that if you put your garbage you get such a fine, and if you speed you get fine. Wait, the government has everybody's going to make a rule. There's certain people, certain offices, they have the authority to be kaveya the chukim in the Medina. So a melech is Amar Ma'akar Kartura. He has the samchus to be kaveya zayin chukim. So Shas der Melech sagt das jetzt, man versteht jetzt, man versteht nicht. Darf sich zuhören zum Melech. But what if the Melech says a tzivui that makes sense to do? Makes sense. The Melech sagt a hayra that no one should make noise at 3 o'clock in the morning. A tzivui that makes sense. So it's true that the keich hatzivui HaMelech is neveah because the Melech has a certain samchus. But such a tzivui, man darf nicht onkommen to the keich HaMelech. Man darf nicht onkommen to the fact that he's a Melech and therefore have to surrender to him. Apiseicha darf man sich echt zuhören zu them. You have certain things, the Eibush is behind everything. The question is, which Tnua is expressed through this Inyan? Which Inyan Elokus is needed, or which Inyan Elokus is expressed through this phenomenon? That's the question. So being Mamshech Elokus in Welt, which Inyan is expressed through this phenomenon of being Mamshech Elokus in Welt? So there's in Pashtus, Adargav Elokus Bagbala, because that's the degree of Elokus that is being married through Welt. It says, Be'emek Yeser, the Eibush is Blitbos Nimshech in Welt. Because the Eibush is not defined, therefore it can be Nimshach in Elam Asiyah. But the etzem, there's no ma'ilo mata. So this inyan doesn't express him. If he wants, he can be everywhere. The shaila is if this inyan stems or results from his pshitas. So the etzem, the etzem, hat das nicht. It says, wie baden was bist du kafloshli? Wo sheine mugde batzir de lamaila da. Wie khot igam der, und dann besteht eine flo. Harde hayrid de lamatu gide afloshli. This expresses his pshitas. Wie seidem zu shigile ha afloshli igam ba efen hayrid. The kol shmufli yes bechol ler lamati yes. The Rebbe is saying this, he wants to speak the same way we have beneget to eres hamislap shemikelim. That's a general in Chassidus. That when you have an pnimi, so the pnimi there's a smakim to the keli. V'haraya, the more they say the Chassidus brings the mashal keich and the ayin, that the keich hariyah should lay better higher than the ayin. The ayin is just a keli to the keich hariyah, but the ayin has a chshivus. V'haraya, that the keich hariyah is mizgal, the gili of the keich hariyah is dependent according to the degree of zichuch of the ayin. If it's more mezuchach, but it's gal ben starker the keich hariyah. So the fact that the gili is going to be totally in the matzav makabel is a right that the gili is limited according to the mid of the makabel. So the musik of pshit is the same thing also. The same way a gili mugbal is nisgal through kalim, a gili built in mugbal also is nisgal through kalim. Means with what type of kalim? The fact that he's not defined, but there's different levels of not being defined. According to the different levels that are not being defined, is going to be how low he could go. The Eifen HaYerida means the fact he could be in a medaber. And the fact that he be in Shechana Daimim, Chveis Lamata Mata B'Yeser, is the Fi Erech, Vos Far Apshit Sifra. There was no. What do you mean, that called different? What do you mean?
How low can go?
So, not how, so according to where this slapsh is going to be, let's say, if the Rav, which is Keich HaFla, is in one darga, so we're able to explain the seichel in one type of levush. If his keich hafshata is not different, but there's kenem asbas in a much lower levush. Does that?
How low you can go, not the Eifen. Eifen is how it gets down.
Or the Eifen of the Yerida. I mean, the Eifen of the Yerida means not lower, it's saying whether it's going to be nirgash emek or not. That's the Rebbe, that's the Rebbe means. But this is the same nekuda. The question is if the levush is going to be in a way that's a cheren, that there's an inyan which is being expressed through this levush, or you're speaking of levush. You could say it like that, Eifen Yerida.
How can you die together?
How could you have dargas and bli gather? You say if he's not defined, so he's not defined at all. If he's not defined, he's not defined at all. Yeah, but this is a pashut. Because I'm saying there's different dargas and mitzias. This is a pashut. I'm just saying, you dugma the Rebbe is saying over here. We have a dugma in seichel. The Rebbe is saying that you have a chacham in the Beis state, that a chacham gadol. There's as general shayach said, how could you have dargas and einer reich and dargas and blikvul? But I'm saying what the Rebbe is saying here. There is where you have you have in seichel keich hafshata. You have a Rav that's able to be masber a edel azach in a levush, in a mashal. So that's in apshit is the way it's nizgale within the mizgaris of svaris, within the world of seichel. You have the in apshit is the way it's nizgale beyond the world of seichel. I'm saying in them ashit kama v'kama dargas. The tnu of heder agdara could be the way it's nizgale within the mizgaris of keich haseichel, seeing a svare not an amugdar to keifim, or there's bechlal seeing the bechlal the mitzias the etzim in a mitzias not an amugdar to keifim. You understand what I'm saying? Not necessarily chilukim in the tnu of heder agdara gufa. But you have heder agdara in different, the way it's expressed in this tchum or in that tchum. You have heder agdara within Atzilus itself. You have heder agdara within the Seder Shlashlos, heder agdara within Seder Shlashlos HaKlalis. So that's Zayin.
You're saying this is still mugdar in an agiloi that it cares to be miskala?
What the Rebbe is saying here?
Yeah.
The Rebbe is saying here is that the Maila and the Mata have a tfisas makim. The Metzias Ha'elam is you can't. Mitzad this darga, there's a tfisas makim to the Metzias Ha'elam.
So that it could be miskala through.
Because dafka through its tachtei say that the Rabbat Shemchav told the Zohan from Shloime, but he said it to his Talmidim there that they have a very hard time being pale on the when using Teresemis to have a shpa on the. So he told them. One of the things he said to them is that dafka through them they're the highest darga. Dafka through them, why? Because Al Rebbe says that the kavanah is a dirin tachten she'ein tachten l'mateimen. So he thinks that this is the ultimate ilui because dafka. He's saying there's a tfisas makim to the tachten because dafka in a low tachten dafka through him b'tzcharei zagen the mitis apshitis the mitis hedragdor. You're saying a general part whether the air is lefi arach elam or not. You're saying there's a tfisas makim to the mitzias hamat. Dafke through the Metzias of the Tachten, sagt sich Ares, the Pshita Salah. As what is given, if there wouldn't be the Yerida, and there wouldn't be this aspect that the Yerida is distant from Bittul, the Tzitz Hevecha Bittul, was sich Ares gesagt, the Pshitas. So there's a Tfisas Makim, there's value to the Metzias HaTachten. If there's value to Metzias outside of the Nekuda, it's not Atzmas. Atzmas is that there's only him. And he's not expressed through any Tnu of Metzias outside of him himself. Not his song to anything. So they were speaking in a line, you see, but the first thing of Leichem Shefreim Tekim Shefer is that the Tachten is Ma'ir the Elin. Then Tachten is not Ma'ir the Elin, because the Elin is Mufshid. But through the Tachten, the Elin could express his Maila. If through the Tachten, the Elin could express his Maila, that itself is a tzvakim to the Metzias HaTachten. Shekin Atzmus is beyond it. Says, Mizem move on, the Mashkosa Bad Rushin for Ben Birzeh, which is 9 base there. She was Shana Tzarech Li Sam Shacham Atzmus Erin Sof. Hakabana Bezeh. He la flood Erin Sof, Shein Mugdar, the Ibish is Ilui. In a Vos Pashtet, Ilui, in Vos, his beyondness, that's the Rebbe saying. In order to Am Shalom Gosim Biyah, you have to have the Ibish's beyondness. His aflo. I don't know which word to use. As there's, that is not defined, we're speaking about his aflo, we're talking about his greatness. And his great, not nish der etzem. The etzem is beyond any expression of greatness. That's already the way Lakus comes in the tzir of Metzias.
Isn't that also an expression?
What do you mean?
That's beyond.
Not to express the concept of beyond. There's only him himself.
That itself is also giving a flow. You're saying he's not.
He's not about a flow. He's not about greatness. There's only him.
That itself is
Why is it a flow?
We're not.
Who said we're trying to? We're not trying to bring out. We're not trying to bring out. The Rebbe is saying is if you're bringing out, it's already not. It's not the etzem kamei shuv b'atzmusa. If you're bringing out, then it's the way he could be perceived by a metzias. It's the way as a shaykhis. We're not bringing it out. Taka. Who said we're bringing it out? So don't know them. We're not using a word to bring him out. Here.
Being not mudar and Ma'alamata, you're saying we're not trying to bring.
Where do you see that it's undefined in Ma'alamata? That even though he's very high, you find him betachten also. Here we're saying he's not high and he's not low. We're going to see how the atzmas is not expressed through a phenomenon.
It's through something that doesn't bring him out.
Who said? You just said that. That's not what the Rebbe says.
Because you said you have to not bring him out. So whenever you don't bring him out,
that's all pratim in this first in of aflo. Whatever you're saying now is pratim in the nekuda of aflo.
If I serve a Beit Zara and it's nothing, and I don't do tshuva, that brings out atzmos.
Who said that?
It's not together. Is that eventually the matter, the emes of it is the Eibishter.
Steht noch Chassidus as a word?
According,
based on Chassidus, you're saying that's the whole point of Chassidus, that there's the etzem himself. You're already saying how the etzem is expressed. That's already
not expressing.
relates to. Not expressing is not a point either. You're saying there's a concept of not expressing. There's him himself. Okay, we'll see how the Nekuda of Atzmus is going to. Shekin abir delot ham shos hamaz v'shan shechlis ma'atzmus yourself l'shalias v'siyag hamaz b'chol hadarges ham shochim ma'atzmus yourself mamish. We'll see how the Rebbe attaches the beginning of Siv. Okay, we'll read it, but we'll just as a